Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Places and go to the best one.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you went to work for BNSF, what made you do that?
I'll be honest, like I did an internship with them and they just paid me the most. And I was too lazy my senior year to go find another job because I already had them lined up. The pay was really good. Like for the first part of my life, I was very much like follow the flow, right?
Mm-hmm. I got you. So when you made the decision, and this is the reason I'm asking this, is a lot of people that have sort of gone through the evolution that you've gone through. There are some people that are listening to us right now that are trying to decide whether or not they're going to go out of state to invest. What was it that made you decide or give you the confidence to decide to invest far away from Washington? Was it Washington State? Was it because you were all over the place with BNSF? Like you were gone all the time anyway? Or what was it that sort of gave you the confidence to venture out and start investing in Alabama and some of those other places?
Yeah, there were two, I think, subtle things and one primary thing. So the subtle things were like I traveled a lot. I was going in and out of Nebraska, Montana, Texas, Oklahoma. So I was, I had seen a lot of these types of places, right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes we'll help out some of the clients that live in Hawaii and they have never been to any of these types of markets. They've never even been to Houston.
Right.
And so I think I checked the box there. Like, I guess, for example, like a lot of investors, they like to invest in Las Vegas, which isn't the best place to invest, but that's where people go all the time because they go gamble there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's just like you've been there, it exists on in the world. So, check that box there. The second subtle thing was like, being an engineer, I know the numbers, right? But the numbers aren't that difficult. I mean, we give away people a spreadsheet they can play around on their own. I think the URL or the videos on thewealthelevator.com/turnkey, you can kind of see for yourself. It's not that difficult. But I think being an engineer is like, that fear isn't there. It's like, hey, it's just numbers. You don't know what, there's a level of uncertainty. You just kind of pad your numbers and you go with it, right?
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is, and this is why I'm big on like community and getting yourself around other people. The term, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with most.
Yeah. Good point.
When I had a few rental properties in Seattle, and then I actually got on the phone and I talked to other real investors that own like these properties remotely. And my takeaway was like, and I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, but like, I was like, these guys aren't that smart. They're not exceptional human beings. I mean, cool people. And I was like, you know what? If they can do it, so can I.
Yeah.
And I think that guides me a lot. Like, I think sometimes, I mean, I'm up in that point, first half of my life, not yet 40, for younger people, or maybe just speaking for myself, like you go through life and you're not exactly confident in your skills because you haven't had experiences yet.
Right. Good point.
And you always kind of maybe doubt yourself and you kind of size yourself up to other people doing it. And you, at least myself, like you kind of wonder, hey, do I have the capacity to do this? The truth is, rental real estate is the easiest entrepreneur activity you can out there. The problem is it's capital intensive. So you need money to play the game, right? If
Right.
not, you're just flipping houses or doing wholesaling, which is not really investing, in my
Right.
opinion. But if you have the money, it's pretty easy to get into this. Of course, I didn't realize this back then. I was just, overwhelmed. I mean,
Right.
I think maybe because my parents said only rich people do rental properties, right? Um, but I think that was a big thing, and just putting one step in front of the other. Or I'm going to buy one rental property remotely. I mean, and I'm going to go buy a 200-unit apartment complex. I'm going to do it 5 more times this year. Like it's just putting one step in front of the other and moving. But a big part of it was getting around other people. So, I mean, that's why we have our mastermind group of other accredited, purely passive accredited investors, for people who want to, we tell them, hey, don't join unless you're going to be investing $250,000, $500,000 into this alternative investment space. People are serious about, deploying their capital and, taking action, not from a general partner, operator point of view, but like as a passive investor, getting
Right.
around other passive investors and trading referrals, talking about deals they're looking at from a due diligence perspective. You need to really get yourself in that crucible and find that crucible.
Mhm.
But I mean, when I was kind of moving through this space, it's extremely hard for passive investors to meet other passive investors because you're just running into a bunch of younger broke guys.
Yeah.
Like the local real estate club is like one of the worst places for a passive investor to go, especially a credit investor, because that's just filled with guys who are trying to get rich quick and here real estate's the way to do it, and they don't got money,
Mhm.
So and like a lot of these educational guru groups out there, they're there to teach a young guy who doesn't have the money yet how
Mhm.
to get there. So there was a real void in the world of groups that were more community based, something that I wanted, right? Like, we all are accredited investors here. We're not in competition with each other. In fact, we actually should collaborate with each other. What deals are you seeing? And then we can both invest in that one.
Mhm.
So that was kind of the need that I had. But again, it's extremely hard to find passive investors because another thing, most passive investors are in their 40s, 50s. They have families, they have kids, they're working a multiple 6-figure job or business. They don't have time to go to a local happy hour, like
Right.
real estate clubby thing, because they just don't do that.
Right.
And the second thing is they're very private about
Mhm.
they have $1 million or greater. They actually have something to lose. So they
Mhm.
prefer to keep themselves hidden, just from a liability standpoint. Somebody, great target to get sued, right? Hey, I'm a
Mhm.
accredited investor out there. Somebody come and sue me, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's just this is what makes it really hard.
By the way,
But
that's a real
there's a need.
thing. That's a real thing. Okay. What you're talking about is a real thing. And the people that are listening that are not accredited investors don't quite understand that most of the people that I know that are worth the kind of money that you're talking about, they just want to be left alone. They just want to be quiet and go about their lives. And they want to invest their money the way they want to invest their money, right? And that's it. They just, they're not looking to necessarily to make friends. They're not necessarily looking to, you know what I mean? It's not something that they sort of have their social circle built out. And this really is a real thing. And, people I don't think quite grasp that. I don't think they quite understand that, yeah, it's a liability thing too, right? Because this is a real world. And in the real world, if you have a significant net worth, you're a target. You're a
Yeah,
target for your family. You're a target for your, for people that you knew in the past. You know what I mean? Like you want to just kind of, these people just kind of want to stay to themselves and they want to socialize with their friends, right? Their group kind of thing, right? And that's pretty much it. So it's a real thing that you're talking about. It's a real
I mean,
dynamic.
it certainly is. I mean, we'll call it out what it is. It is first world problem.
Mhm.
right? I mean, I would have much rather have these problems than figure out how to get paid six figures so I can save $20,000 per year do it for
Yeah.
10 years so I can become a credit investor.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people out there. I think the amount of the population, I think like it's 7% of the population are
Mhm.
accredited investors out
Yeah.
there. And I think a lot of people, they're in this like the people that we help are the people between $1 to $10 million net worth, where you
Mhm.
don't have the expertise or knowledge to like, I mean, like the people that I work with are first generation multimillionaires.
Mhm.
And like my parents, they don't have this kind of money. They don't have the network and the service providers. And that's how we kind of help people, right? Just on the legal standpoint. Once you go over $2 to $3 million net worth, you might want to think about an irrevocable trust to get your
Mhm.
assets out of your name so that if you were to get sued, you don't own it. You
Right.
control it, but you don't own it. Right. And there's all these types of like nuances that the only way you're going to learn it is through a network or peer to peer. A
Right.
lot of the CPAs or attorneys, they don't understand this type of stuff. They're just,
Mhm.
rubber stamping the tax returns for the average Joe out there. But you're not the average Joe when you're an accredited investor. You're
Right.
the top 7%. So, and what I've realized, and the people that we like to help are the people who are trying to build a legacy and, want to give back to people, down the road. Um, but and we also say like they have their social circle,
Mhm.
but a lot of my friends are not accredited investors. And you have different friends in different verticals in your life. You have the golf buddies, you have
Mhm.
your college buddies, your work buddies, and then you have some accredited investor buddies who geek out on finances and investing in this stuff with you, right? And I think for people in our space, if you really list down their hobbies, playing around with their financial spreadsheet and investing is a lot more fun to them than golfing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the case. And why not surround yourself with financially minded friends in this world? So there is a big part of this too. And I'm always like, it's so hard for people to meet each other these days after the age of 30 and 40 to build these new relationships that the relationships are kind of the currency of the wealthy for sure. Um,
That's why I'm a big
but
fan of masterminds, get around people that are doing things, get around people that are accomplishing things, get around, right? Because they think differently. They just think differently. And it's a real thing that your average net worth is the average of the 5 or 6 people you spend the most time with, right? You want to continue to be thinking about who you're spending your time with and what kind of conversations you're having, right? And are those higher level conversations, right? Are you having conversations about things that are productive, or are you having conversations about, the latest television show or you know what I mean? It's like it's a different it's a different crowd and it's a different way of looking at the world. Like when you got to a certain point, you changed your view of the world. And it was kind of a cool thing, right? It was a point where you got to where you were just like, you know what? This is making more sense to me. And I think part of it was when you left BNSF and you went into the civilian life, in the government, right? It was a real change. Like it was sort of an epiphany to an extent. Let me ask you a question. Growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
to be honest, I didn't have any influential people. I mean, maybe that was why I was so thirsty to go on this podcast barrage in 2010 because I didn't have any of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually do remember like I don't know, this sounds so long ago, but like yeah, 2010 definitely like devoured a lot of those Tony Robbins books because
Hmm.
I had nobody around me.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really do Boy Scouts or anything like that. There was I didn't know mentor
Hmm.
back then. And I think, and then people ask like, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of getting mentors out there. The ones that you want, you have to pay for.
Hmm.
But there's especially this day and age, like your podcasts, like there's all these informal mentors that you can get for free out there.
Hmm.
It's just about curating who you want and devouring their content.
Yeah. Well, and it's what you let in, right? And I tell people all the time, you literally are to blame for whatever you let in. So be selective, right? Be careful about what it is that you let in and make sure that it's within what your walk is, what your march is, where you're headed, right? There's a journey that we're all on, all of us, and it either fits or it doesn't, right? And it's amazing to me how people look back on their lives and they didn't accomplish what it was that they were looking to accomplish, but they never changed their group of friends. One of the very first things that I learned from Tony Robbins, and by the way, Tony was an absolute blessing for me. I had been searching for something like him and what he taught for a very, very long time in my life. And it was like the light went on. And all of a sudden, I changed my group of friends. I started top grading like there was no tomorrow. I'm still top grading, right? Because I'm going into different echelons and different groups and different masterminds and that kind of thing. And I'm finding people that I really enjoy talking to. And we have productive relationships. Does that make sense? It's
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
those things. It's one of those things that people need to pay attention to this kind of thing. Because success is something that you can achieve partially by osmosis. Be around the right people and have the right kinds of conversations.
Yeah, I mean it's involuntary, but that said, we have a self-selecting group of people that are listening to this right now. Now
Absolutely.
we're getting kind of in like past the 30-minute stage, and you're already a podcast listener, so we may not be talking specifically to you guys out there because you guys are already kind of doing this to some extent.
Right.
But I mean, like what I'll do personally, like every 6 months, I'll go and prune my podcast list. Which ones aren't doing it for me, and where do I want to go? What
Yeah.
does it topic matter that, like, I mean, I'm now a new parent, so I may start to pick up
Congratulations.
this type of stuff. Thanks.
Yeah. That's awesome.
um but it's this idea of like self-directing your life.
Mhm.
Don't just vicariously listen to what's on the radio, which is exactly what people do, right? There's 6 or 7 channels on the radio and they're only listening to that stuff. They're
Mhm.
not filling their head with audiobooks or podcasts, but that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I would say take it another step further, right? I mean, podcasts are great. They're a bit uncurated, but this is kind of where you seek out the right books. And then I think the books are a place to open up to the right groups.
Yeah.
And there was a while there where every year I would spend like 5-10 grand on some kind of group or program to get around the people. And I would just I had to spend that, right? It was like a
Mhm.
personal like development, research and development kind of department.
Yeah.
So, if it's just $300 for you a quarter or $500 a year, then so be it. But like the whole thing is like consciously pull yourself to what you want to be directing in the future.
Take
If
steps
you're not
forward.
if you're not directing yourself to a future, you're gonna be dying. Like
Yeah.
the whole saying, if you're not moving forward, you're going backwards. I
The-
mean, if it and it is so true here. But I think, yeah, we're talking to people who already kind of get this. And
yeah.
so I'm trying to think of some ways to actually like take it the next level.
Well,
Um,
one of the things people can do is they can sit down and think about where they spend their time. Very simple, right? Sit down and think about where you spend your time and sit down and write it down. What do you typically do in the morning? What do you typically do in the middle of the day? What do you typically do at night? Right? And where are you? Are you commuting back and forth to work? Are you spending an hour and a half a day each way going back and forth to work? That's 3 hours that you could be investing in yourself. You could be listening to a podcast. You could be listening to a book. You could be, right? You could be consuming content that can help you and help improve not only your life, but the lives of the people around you. So one of the cool things that I take great pride in with our podcast is you and I are recording episode 198. We've been doing this 9 months now. We've done 198 episodes. And our listening rate is 75%. So we have 75% of all of our listeners listen to more than 75% of our podcast. And our podcasts are long. They're 40 minutes to an hour, right? We're at 75% average after 198 episodes. That's crazy,
Amazing.
man.
Yeah, amazing.
That is absolutely awesome. So the people that are listening to us are loyal. And by the way, for those of you that are listening, thank you, right? But they're loyal and they're hanging on the content. They're hanging on what we're talking about because they know that we're looking to give back. They know that we're looking to add quality. They know that. So let's talk about, if it's okay, let's talk about the books that you've written. So there's one in particular that I found that I actually started this morning. It's The Wealth Elevator, right? Is the latest book that you have that's available online?
Yeah. So like this is kind of that real beefy 200-page book that everything that I've kind of learned, I have put into this this kind of foundational book. The idea of like this wealth elevator, there's different floors to the elevator, and
Right.
obviously the elevator, we're trying to expedite you up to the quickest time possible, through the ascent of this financial journey. But what I realize is there's no books out there written for people, with $500,000, $1 million or greater, right? All of the books out there, like, like Dave Ramsey, Caesar Orman, I really like these guys. They're cool, but their advice is like situated for the guy getting out of debt.
Yeah.
The guy who doesn't yet make 100 grand at their day job.
Yeah, they're
And
digging their way out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, maybe it sounds bad, but we call that level the basement level of the wealth elevator. If go back to my story, I didn't start with any debt. I mean, I had a little college debt, but I had a good salary out of college. So I started on this first floor of the wealth elevator. I didn't have any net worth at that point. But what did I do for 6, 7 years? But I bought little rental properties and saved up my money. And then I switched to the floor 2, which is syndications of private placements, which was a little bit more scalable, and moved on from there. But I kind of look back at my journey and like, what were the key levels that I got to? Basement, first floor, second floor, and then where I'm at now. And then as I always try to like trailblaze ahead and meet other people who are 50 million, $100 million net worth and greater, the family offices out there, then expand on the curriculum of like the penthouse level and what's beyond the penthouse level, so that the reader can know what's the next, where are they at now, and what are the strategies. And we have like these tables. Of course, I'm an engineer, because I have these tables in there, where you look where you're at and you see what you're going to be doing for investments, what tax strategies you're going to implement, what privatized banking, and a few other categories, what you're going to be doing, and see what you're going to need to do now. But also, it's so valuable to know what's the next step and what's that step beyond that, so you can kind of cut the corners to some extent.
Right.
Like for example, if I knew what I knew now, I wouldn't buy 11 rental properties. It was a pain in the butt to sell those stupid things, and their headaches. I would have only bought like a few of these things at that time, and I would have skipped to the next floor right away. I jumped in an elevator. But sometimes it's a little disjointed, because you're kind of like absorbing the material and all these strategies, but it's like, what floor are we talking about now? But that's how it is, right? Like, you get to a certain stage of the wealth creation journey, and it changes. And then it gets to another point. I talk a lot about like, you have to get into alternative investments. I do like thousands of free consults. I mean, a lot of the coaching calls are on the YouTube channel, on the website. There are so many permutations and commutations, although they all fit in, certain floors of the wealth elevator. But there's just so many like unique stories and nuances. And of course, that's kind of where I come in with like, people have the different money mindsets. So how do we get them to navigate these floors based on what they're working with, and especially what they have upstairs? But that's kind of where like, the curriculum is put forth in like a step-based kind of a format.
Well, that's where I think this is so valuable. What you bring to the table is so valuable, because you've gone ahead of people that are interested in growing their wealth and interested in investing and that kind of thing. You've gone ahead of them, right? And you've said, look, I made these mistakes. These are the things that I did that I wouldn't do again if I had it to do over again, right? people can actually learn from some of the things that you've done where you came up a little short and you learned from it and moved forward. That's a big deal. If people can take advantage of reading your books, they can learn from what you've done, where you've blazed the trail and gone ahead of them, like you said, and you learn these things. And so you're passing on the lessons that you were able to go ahead and learn so that they don't necessarily have to repeat them.
Yeah, or make the same mistakes, right?
Right.
Like working with the wrong people. You need to use leverage and debt, but where's that line?
Yeah.
Right? And there's always risk in everything you do. So what is the holistic like risk to reward mix that you want to be taking based on your own personal situation?
Yeah.
But what I do know is you can't get to financial freedom by the time you're 60, 70, unless you're in alternative investments.
Mhm.
Why? Because you have better returns, you're getting better alpha, you're paying a lot less in taxes. And on those two fronts, that's the secret of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way. I mean, if you implement all the strategies, you typically get where you want to be in a third amount of time.
Yeah. And I think it's important, like we talked about at the beginning, I think it's important that people realize, because here's the thing, and you know this better than anybody. People look at the world in terms of there's two things you can absolutely count on: death and taxes, right? Well, okay, yeah, you're going to die at some point, right? But the tax thing, you really do have power over. You really can get to a place to where you pay zero in taxes. You can get to a place to where you take advantage of the tax code, which is there to incentivize you to do certain activities, right? Being a passive investor is something that's massively incentivized by the tax code. And there's a reason for it. It puts your capital, like you said, deploy your capital, right? And let it work for you. That's a big deal. And if you can get to a place, like, I don't know if you remember this, but a few years ago, the mainstream media was just lambasting the Kushner family, Jared Kushner and his family, because they hadn't paid a dime in income taxes in years. Okay. Well, they were smart. They did this. They built the business that they have using rental real estate. Rental real estate provides you with depreciation, which offsets your income, and you can literally live tax-free, right? That's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. Like I said, in California, that's an instant 35, 40% raise. Because you're gonna earn income, right? You either earn income and pay 40% in taxes, or you can earn income and not pay any money in taxes. Years ago, I had a guy walk in from Florida. He was 70 years old, and he had a son that was in college. Walked into our real estate office. I owned the Keller Williams office in Escondido for 18 years. And he just happened to walk in on a Saturday afternoon. And so I sat with him. We went over everything, and he goes, "Let me show you my tax return." He was paying cash for the duplex. He was buying for his son who was in college. I didn't need his tax return. He's told his wife, "Go get my tax return." Went through it line by line with me, Schedule E, the whole thing, right? And showed me. He's like, "Look, I make $700,000 a year passive, and I pay zero in taxes. And here's how I did it. When you grow up, young man, I want you to be just like me." He didn't have to do that, Lane. He didn't have to do it, but he was living the American dream, and he wanted to share it with me. Does that make sense? That's
Yeah,
the kind of thing that you're doing every day, and it's incredibly admirable, and I'm super proud of you. I just think what you're doing is amazing, and I want people to spend time learning about you and reading your books, because it gives them a hand up. It shows them how they can change, if they want to, how they can change their lives for the better.
yeah. There's a saying out there that money talks, but wealth whispers.
Yeah.
And I'll say something about Donald Trump just to wake people up. And here it goes. But not saying anything politically about the guy, but when he goes off on like he doesn't pay taxes or this stuff, he brings a lot of attention to it. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like for people don't realize like one of the big tax strategies he would use is like that whole Mar-a-Lago property he
Yeah.
has. Adjacent to that is a big conservation easement, which is one of
Mhm.
the big ways a lot of us would get a lot of tax benefits
Mhm.
from that. They would go into a conservation easement syndication, pretty much pick up losses on the cheap to offset their taxes. But it like a lot of things, it's a cat and mouse game with the IRS. Like, things will change. And I think that's where like a community around you, like to pick up all these best practices is very, very important. But just goes to show like a lot of this is kind of happening under your nose. And a lot of these strategies, like when I discovered them, I was like, really, that's what you're supposed to do?
Yeah.
It really goes complete opposite what we're all kind of taught to invest in 401ks for supposedly tax deferment.
Right.
They ain't what the wealthy are doing, folks.
Right. It's
Um,
true.
and a lot of these things are just very implementable by the average Joe out there. However, like in a little bit different tweak. And when you combo a lot of these strategies together, that's when you get that total effect. But yeah, it's right under people's noses. So
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about it is you literally deliver it to them. You deliver it to them on a plate and you're like, look, you can have the future that you want. Read this book, apply what I've learned, right? That's beautiful, man. It's a big, big deal. And like I said, I'm super proud of you. So if people want to reach you, how can they reach you?
yeah, they can we have a podcast, The Wealth Elevator. We talk a lot about taxes, doing due diligence on deals. And I'm not people haven't noticed, I'm not a huge mindset guy. I'm more about tactics and strategies. So if you're more into that, I would say check out the new book. But yeah, if you're an accredited investor, feel free to reach out, Lane at thewealthelevator.com.
Perfect. We'll put a link to your website on your description on the podcast. I can't thank you enough, buddy. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike.
Aloha, bud. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.